So by now, language is probably something you're very familiar with and very confident with as well. After all, it's the nuts and bolts of what we read. The adjectives and the nouns, the description, the way we make sense of a story or an article. Now, when it comes to structure, students sometimes panic, but there's no need to panic, and I'm going to help you to make sense of structure and give you some helpful hints on what to look for. So, when we think about structure, we need to consider key points, such as how a text is set out. Is there a heading, subheading? What are the paragraphs like? Are they long or short? Why? What does the text start with? Is it midway through an idea or right from the beginning? What about the viewpoint? Is it consistent? Does it vary? Now, does the text move forward in a linear way, or does it go backwards and forwards? Does it jump around? What about the tense? Is it past, present, future? Does it mix them up a little bit? Does the text change? Is there some sort of turning point? Is there evidence of a cyclical narrative where the story ends in a similar way to how it starts? Now, structure is something you might need to write about alongside language, or it might be as a separate question. So we're going to take a look now at a non-fiction text, which you'll probably be familiar with because it was in the previous session. And then I'm going to show you how to write about it. I love Winwood House. It's a home away from home. Mrs. Julie Jones has been visiting Southwood's gem of a hotel, Winwood House, since 1982. Why, you may ask? Well, she loves it and says it's just like being at home but with room service. Winwood House is the perfect place to stay. It has been the best hotel in all of Southwood since 1886. That's over 100 years of perfection, and it does not seem to show any signs of changing, so we can be thankful for this. Winwood House is 5-star and promises to offer an experience like no other. To find out more, you've only got to check out www.winwoodhousehotel.co.uk to see what you're missing. Julie Jones says, "It's my favourite place to stay. I'm almost scared to say so in case others find out about it." Well, it's too late, Mrs. Jones. Your secret is out. Perhaps it's time for you to discover all that Winwood House can offer. Now, if you were writing about this text in terms of structure, these are the sorts of things you could say. The text begins with Julie Jones' comments, suggesting it isn't the beginning of the text, even if it is. Being immersed straight into Mrs. Jones's experience is effective, and this continues with a short paragraph showing more information. But this time, it's in the third person where Julie Jones is being written about. The text continues with an informative paragraph about Winwood House before focusing back on Mrs. Jones, which gives the text a cyclical quality. A key point here is to consider structure and how it works, and always remain focused on this. Now, we can move on to think about some other techniques and devices that you could use when writing about structure. Now, structure can be quite tricky to write about. As I've mentioned before, it might be combined with a language question, or it could be separate to this. It will depend on your examination syllabus. Let's start with a short non-fiction extract. The summer heat has peaked, and blistering temperatures are especially noticeable on scorching city streets. Known as the urban heat island effect, this phenomenon labels the way urban environments trap more heat than nearby suburban and rural areas. As a result, increased energy demands and air pollution are often anticipated, yet unavoidable. Or the concrete and the blacktop warms up faster, says Lauren Nash, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. So it keeps the city hotter and it stays hotter longer. So here, the text starts with a clear introductory sentence and it is then developed further. The second section has some direct quotation, which adds to the plausibility or the believability of the text. Now here's a different example. It's longer and has a different focus, a different theme. Back to the coalface or not. Brendan Baker used to be a miner of coal in fact, which as you can imagine is a hot, dirty and difficult job and one to be best off out of. Or maybe not. Just last week, when the Mendlebury Times interviewed Mr. Baker, he was searching up mining jobs online. You know, he said, you can take the miner out of the mine, but taking the mine out of the miner is quite the challenge. Brendan Baker mined coal for 20 years of his life. He experienced day after day, week after week of dust and grime, but he can't leave it behind. So here, if you're writing about structure, your comments might include things like the title and how it ties in with the subject matter, the short opening paragraph, the choice of 3 words as a sentence fragment in the second paragraph, the evidence through dialogue, and then the background information about the miner, linking back to the title, which makes it cyclical in structure. Now, one way of thinking about structure is to consider it visually. Imagine a physical structure, something like a building, or something like what you can see on the screen. What aspects can you write about here? The structure on the left and the right? What's hanging in the middle? What is happening further down, where you can see someone? Is there a consistent feature here, such as the metal bars or the metal rods? Is there anything unusual or something you want to question? Now, obviously, in the examination, you won't be writing about a picture regarding structure. It will be based on a written text. But this just gives you an idea of key points and how you can get some practice. So now we will take a look at fiction. Here is an extract from Chapter 1 of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. There was no possibility of taking a walk that day. We had been wandering, indeed, in the leafless shrubbery an hour in the morning. But since dinner, Mrs. Reed, when there was no company, dined early. The cold winter wind had brought with it clouds so sombre and a rain so penetrating that further outdoor exercise was now out of the question. I was glad of it. I never liked long walks, especially on chilly afternoons. Dreadful to me was the coming home in the raw twilight with nipped fingers and toes, and a heart saddened by the chidings of Bessie the nurse, and humbled by the consciousness of my physical inferiority to Eliza, John and Georgiana Reed. The said Eliza, John and Georgiana were now clustered around their mamma in the drawing room. She lay reclined on a sofa by the fireside, and with her darlings about her, for the time, neither quarrelling nor crying, looked perfectly happy. Me, she had dispensed from joining the group, saying she regretted to be under the necessity of keeping me at a distance, but that she heard from Bessie and could discover by her own observation that I was endeavouring in good earnest to acquire a more sociable and childlike disposition, a more attractive and sprightly manner, something lighter, franker, more natural as it were. She really must exclude me from privileges intended only for contented, happy little children. What does Bessie say I have done? I asked. Jane, I don't like cavaliers or questioners. Besides, there's something truly forbidding in a child talking up to her elders in that manner. Be seated somewhere, and until you can speak pleasantly, remain silent. So, how does the writer structure the opening of Jane Eyre to interest you as a reader? You might comment on things like the opening first-person reference to not going outside, the development of this theme in paragraph 2, the zooming in and out on the weather and the setting as well as the characters, the use of dialogue, the way Jane is spoken to and how this starts in paragraph 2 then continues right through into the end, the cyclical narrative. Let's do a quick poll here. Which of these is an effective way to start a response to a structure-focused question? Is it, I'm writing about the way the text is written, or the text starts with a focus on the narrator, allowing the reader to get into the story, or When Jane is spoken to, it shows the reader that she is in trouble, or the writer uses adjectives to represent the character. Now, hopefully, you will agree with me that the second one, the text starts with a focus on the narrator, allowing the reader to get into the story, is the most effective for a structure-focused question. Now, you should be quite confident with how to approach a structure question at this stage, whether you're writing about it on its own or alongside language as well. We're going to be moving on in the next session to look at comparisons.